I am super excited right now to talk about this game, 1980X. I'll give you a little bit of overall information and then gonna get into the specifics, and then at the very end tell you why I love this game so much, um, and give you like an official review and strip down things. But first, an overview. First of all, I've never reviewed a video game before. I've reviewed music and movies and even podcasts so far, but I have yet to do a video game, and I wasn't expecting this. So this game I started backing on Kickstarter, the only thing I've ever backed on Kickstarter ever. It was over a year ago. I don't remember how I heard about it. I don't remember how that came to be and where I saw it and whatever. There was a trailer for it I remember watching, and I was just like, whoa, this is pretty cool. First of all, like I was born in the 80s. The game was 1980X, and it is really a throwback to all these gaming stereotypes or like these different styles of games that were very popular in the 80s. I was playing some of these game types in the 90s. Some of them I never even really got a chance to play, which I'll talk about because we'll go through the 5 different game types that are represented in this game. They're also, well, first of all, I saw the trailer. I don't remember how. I saw the trailer, and it was like, yo, back us on Kickstarter. We want to make this cool game. It's by Hybit Studios. They are based out of Stockholm, Sweden. And I haven't done a whole bunch of research on other things that they've done or anything like that, so just if you're looking for that, you got to do your own research because I hardly ever do any. Um, but I remember when I saw this trailer, I was like, whoa, like the aesthetics really appealed to me, the music really appealed to me. This is just the start screen of the game. I just wrapped it right now, and yeah, so anyway, but I mean, it's got this color palette that is this very distinct feel to it. There's a huge contrast. Even on the start screen, we've got this like navy blue, dark purples in the background, and this like hot pink of this text. And the font really appealed to me as well. When I saw the trailer, I immediately thought, and also with the music, I thought of the movie Drive, which is one of my favorite movies. It's top 10 for me. It was based, in contemporary times as to when the movie came out, which I don't remember the year right now, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't remember. And I loved it. It was also the first time that I heard the artist Kavinsky. I have never done this before. I whipped my phone out during the movie. It was close to the beginning when the song Night Call was playing, and I soundhounded that thing. And I was just, exposed to a whole genre of music that I didn't know existed, which some people call synthwave or retrowave. There's a label called new retrowave or retro new wave. But it's this genre of music that's this hugely 80s influenced synthwave music. It's beautiful, and so that's part of the soundtrack here and what appealed to me. Like I said, I thought of the movie Drive. I made this association, and I was just like, the colors, the soundtrack, and I loved the movie Drive. But anyway, that's only my comparison. I don't think that was purposeful on their part, except for the fact that Drive used some of that same music in those parts. Like Cliff Martinez, I think, did the soundtrack for that, which is brilliant. But anyway, Kavinsky, retro synth wave, whatever. That's part of the soundtrack here. That's part of the appeal. Like I said, the aesthetics, the color palette, the in the trailer, the gameplay itself. Like I said, there's 5 different game types that they go through, but there's also a story element here, and I didn't know how much that would play in. Generally, I'm not a fan of games that are just like story. There's some games that are just like story based, and there's no really action stuff that you can do or control. It's just dialogue and like moving. But anyway, there was a story element here, and I like story elements in games. I just don't like when they're the whole thing. I knew that wasn't going to be the case with this, but I was kind of curious as to how much story was going to be involved, and I wasn't disappointed. It was a really good amount. So, first thing I will say in the terms of reviewing, before we get into details, I'll do way more detailed reviews at the end, but I mentioned that I backed it on Kickstarter. It was estimated to be out March 2019. So I was kind of getting nervous because there were no updates and stuff. There was updates coming out, and it was like, oh, we added this package, we added that package, we're going to release a vinyl of the soundtrack. We did an interview with the person who helped us with the soundtrack, whatever, composers and stuff. And then there was a certain point where they just stopped releasing any updates, and I was like, oh no, is it not coming out? What's happening? March went by, April went by. In May, I mean, I had messaged even myself and never got anything back from them, and I was like, what's going on? Uh, June is when it finally came out. Um, I will tell you now that, and I'll probably remind you at the end, it is available on different platforms. I was playing it on Steam, so I got a Steam code for it because they ask you like what platform would you play this on when you backed it. Now, obviously, because it accomplished its goal on Kickstarter, you can just go and you can just purchase it. It's also on PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch as well. So those are the four different platforms, I guess, that you could be playing it on, consoles and on PC through Steam. Anyway, so I was like nervous because it finally came out in June, and then I saw this thing that was saying, oh, and we're gonna release the second part later, and I was like, yo, the second part, like I was really disappointed, I was really choked, and it's the reason that I didn't play this game until now. It's mid-July, by the way, so this came out a month ago, and I was just like, oh man, I'm kind of choked, like it came out real late, there wasn't a lot of explanation or anything, they didn't really keep us updated with why it was late, or the fact that it was late, or when they thought it was gonna come out, because it was like, I mean, March is like the estimate, but they just never updated anything after they were months late. And then, like I said, they said something about a second part, and I was like, yo, you can't just add insult to injury and come with this game months late and then say it's only half the game and you're going to do another part later. So I wasn't too jazzed on it. Tonight, I just felt in the mood of giving it a shot, and I really quickly just wrapped the whole game. So I will get into, like I said, the details and a further review after. But the 5 game types, if you're not familiar, so we've got the beat 'em up, the shoot 'em up, RPG, driving game, and ninja game. Those are those 5 game types that they focus on that are very 80s influenced. The graphics of the game and stuff, there's definitely more pixelation and just like not quite 8-bit necessarily, like some parts maybe like that, but anyway, it definitely, all the aesthetics there, this throwback feel to the 80s is very strong. It is focused on like arcade games. So let's just go through some of the game types. So we start off with the beat 'em up, and it was really reminiscent of Double Dragon to me. So that's not the only game. I think it was like Streets of Rage, and there was a couple other ones. It's kind of like a side scroller where you are just like navigating yourself through like one street. You're just moving forward, and there's enemies, and then you beat them up. Usually, there's just like there was a punch button for this, and there was a jump button, and if you use both of them in tandem while moving forward, then you did a flying kick. So you get off the train. It's very Warriors-esque in a way. The movie and the book, The Warriors. So like you get off this train, you're by yourself, you're in a hoodie, whatever. And then there's these enemies that like when you get off this subway kind of thing, and you're just trying to move through the street, just trying to get from one place to the next place. You don't know where the next place is. You don't know when it's going to stop. There's some elements in the scene, I guess, if you want to call it that, like some environmental elements that you can interact with. Like there's a phone booth that you can like break and you can get like items from it. There's also some barrels that you can break and get items from. You can't take them and use them as weapons. However, there is someone with a baseball bat, and you can beat them up and well, actually, you can't take their bat, but you can find a bat elsewhere. It's the same bat that the guy uses, and you can use that for a bit before the bat, breaks and goes away. Anyway, so the beat 'em up, that's the basics of that. I found it, like, immediately I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't played a game like this for so long, and I really enjoyed it. And, like, the style of the enemies, they're very, like, punkish, which is, like, what it seemed to always be in those games, where there's, like, dudes with, like, mohawks and, like, Liberty spikes, and there's, like, a white dude who looks exactly the same as, like, an African-American dude, exactly the same, except their skin type is different. That are wearing like the same clothes. There might be some different colors. Anyway, it was good. The classic person in like a weird rain jacket, like Jubilee from X-Men. Anyway, so there was just like these, even just like the style of the characters and everything were very true to that 80s experience. Those 80s games and stuff that I recall, or even early 90s. So the beat 'em up is just that, you know, you're going through, navigating your way through this side scrolling like single street until you get to, it looks like it says that, I mean, there's sign that says hospital and you get there. But I mean, then every time you beat a level, I'll mention there is this story element that comes in, and I'll talk about the whole story after. So I should mention, I don't know about spoilers or not. Like, what's a spoiler to you? You know, you can still play the game and experience it for yourself, right? So I guess, you know, I'll explain the story at the end. Maybe that's the only spoiler there will be. But anyway, that's the beat 'em up. So then there's this story element that comes in, and this, well, I'm telling the story. No, I'm telling the story as it goes. So I guess a little spoiler alert if you are worried about the story. But anyway, it you know our character. I don't know what to call them. I don't know if we ever know our name, but the character that we're playing, I would say it reveals not immediately that it's a female character, which is kind of interesting. At least I'm interpreting it as a female character just because of the voice. They're a little bit androgynous, but I think the voice is the main thing. I'm like, oh, okay, like we're a female, which might play into some stuff later. Anyway, you know, they live in suburbia, and through the beat 'em up, like after that and stuff, they like leave. They're walking through the city. They're talking about some personal stuff. They end up, you know, like finding this arcade. Like they were told to never go to this part of the city because it's this horrible like ghetto part of the city, and they find this arcade and they're like, whoa, and it just blows their mind, right? And it's just like this is their escape from their home life. And then we get into the game that like then they start playing. Like at first it was like the beat 'em up. It was interesting. Like the beat 'em up was like kind of representing them leaving where they lived to get to this other area of the city, and they had to like, you know, fight these enemies along the way. And the character that was in that game looks just like our character, with iconic red hoodie. So then, then they're in this arcade, and then they start playing the shoot 'em up, which is basically like an invader, like a Space Invaders like galaxy type thing. I think of the game Striker 1945, which is not like a space game, but like a war, like airplane game. Like you pick different like whatever kind of like airship you want, and then you've got power ups and different like whatever. You don't get a choice in your spacecraft here or anything, but you're given one, and then you like shoot the incoming enemies again, like a side scroller, which most of these are. And like enemies come at you, you have to like dodge their bullets. There's like a meteor shower thing at one point. You have to like dodge all of that stuff. You get a certain amount of lives. That's the other thing with the gameplay in here. It's not like it ever brings you back to the very, very beginning of the game. Like, it just asks if you want to continue when you die, and then you say yes, and there's like a little cool coin sound, and then you start usually at the beginning of the level. You've got, depending on which game style you're in, usually 3 lives. Depending on which game style you're in, then certain many hits will take away that 1 life, usually 3, but anyway. So it's like this classic kind of... It's not like Space Invaders, like the old school like Atari style thing. Like that's not what it's like. It's like this. Like I said, I compare it to like Striker, 1945. I believe that's what it was called, except that it's like tilted because that game was like portrait style and this is landscape style. The shoot 'em up game. I don't remember what it was called because it actually had a name. All the games in here have their own name. I wish that I remembered what they were. I should have actually written that stuff down. I didn't know I was going to review this game until I was like halfway through it, and I was like, man, I can't wait to finish this game because I really want to talk about it because it's super cool. Anyway, so pardon me that I don't remember the name of the actual games within the game. Whatever. So then you play that, you wrap that, and then it goes to this other element of the story. They end up going to school. They talk about how they love the arcade, and they just can't get enough of it, and whatever. And then you see when they're at school, and that why it might be, it's interesting, it might play a role that if I'm interpreting our character as female, because they start talking about like how, you know, they can't relate to kids at school anymore, and blah, 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 blah. But then there's this like cool, like, this, I don't remember what they called her, like this cool like punk rocker chick or something like that, I think is what they said. And it like shows her, and it's like, oh, are you like attracted to this woman, or like, interesting. But it may be just not even be on a physical level or a sexual level. It's just the fact that like that person is representing the rebel and representing someone that they, our character, can relate to, and they're like putting almost on a pedestal of like, wow, this person is so amazing. They've got this like sick '80s muscle car, and they just like leave the parking lot, and then you're playing the driving game. The driving game to me is kind of like Cruisin' USA. That's kind of what I would compare it to as far as games that I've played that are similar, because there's like a track that's like moving, and you have to just like drive around vehicles. If you hit the vehicles, you just slow down like a lot. There's a timer going on. You have to make checkpoints. That's basically all that happens. I think it's the easiest out of the 5 game types. Um, yeah, yeah, it is. It's the easiest out of the 5 game types. You just have to like drive around the vehicles, make the checkpoints, whatever. I didn't die during this game. I made all the checkpoints the first time, and but then it's really cool because in the last kind of half, like I think you go through 2 or 3 checkpoints, and it's like you only have 20 seconds or 30 seconds to get to them, and then it gives you like an X amount of time to get to the next one, and then whatever. But then there comes a point where you reach like this tunnel, and then I think it was a tunnel. I've only played the game once, and I'm doing this review, and I don't, whatever. Anyway, and it gives you like 200 seconds or something like that, or 300 seconds. I don't remember what it is to get to the next thing. Really quickly, our character starts narrating and telling the story, and is talking about how like they wish they could just leave and go away and find refuge somewhere else, basically. And they're telling the story as you're playing, and you quickly realize like you're not really playing anymore. Like you're controlling the car, and you go into like the city at night and stuff. But there's hardly any cars on the road at this point. It gets even easier, and there's no other checkpoints like that 300 seconds or 200 seconds or whatever it is. It's just like you easily could make it to the next checkpoint. You don't know when that is. And then, I think what's cool about this game is that it does get very clever with the storytelling element tied in with the gameplay, because you're kind of like listening to the story, and it's kind of cruising along without any trouble. And then you see, eventually, it's like, oh man, the timer's kind of running out, and they're telling the story, and then the timer runs out as they kind of say, like, how it's just a parallel to what they're talking about, how eventually they've got to go home. Like that, they've been going to the arcade as an escape in a way, and eventually time runs out and you have to go back home. So that was kind of like tied in very nicely. And then it kind of from there just kind of gets like you go into this ninja game, like I mean, I guess they go to their like backyard. I think it's their backyard, or like maybe out past their backyard into like nature, and they're like hanging out in like a tree fort or like a tree type thing, and then you get into this ninja game, and I felt like that was an interesting way, I guess, to kind of tie that element in, because the other ones seemed so like cohesive, and they just like transferred into the scene transferred into the next game very well, and whatever else. And this seemed, I don't want to say sloppy. It's just like, how do you tie in the ninja game without making it seem weird? And the ninja game is very much in the elements and outside, so I guess that kind of makes sense. Now, the ninja game, I don't know what to compare it to that I've played before. I remember Ninja Gaiden. I remember, or if that's how you pronounce it, that was like one of the most popular like ninja games that I remember for the Nintendo, like the normal Nintendo. But it doesn't really have the same game type as here. So this is kind of where like I'm like, wow, I've never really played a game like this. Again, side scroller, and you have to. I would say this is the most difficult one. Like the shoot 'em up, like space kind of striker game was also pretty difficult. I don't know what's more difficult, that one or this one. So this one, you're just going through and just like slashing enemies, but then you have to jump onto different planes that exist sometimes, and sometimes they're not there. Or you jump over obstacles, and then you can slide under things as well. Slide under like people that are like attacking you, or slide under obstacles. And then there's this element, I should mention too, at the beginning of every game, I had to just like press escape real quick and look at the controls because it doesn't tell you ahead of time what's what. Every game, there's different things you could possibly do. It gives you like you can't change the controls either, by the way, not that I'm aware of. But it gives you like 5 different options. It says like, oh, you enter, Alt, Control, X, or D. They all do the same thing. Or like, if you're moving, you use WASD, like WASD on the keyboard, or the arrows. And whatever. Anyway, so there's like some things like a punch feature that might have 5 different buttons that you could use, whatever's more convenient for you. But I had to look that up at the beginning of every game because I was like, okay, what are we doing? Because it never tells you, which I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but it doesn't tell you what the controls are. So anyway, you have this other element in this ninja game where so you've got like an attack feature. And then you have like a jump and you want to slide, and there's another thing that I didn't understand. It said drop. When I looked at the controls, it said like you jump and you press down, which is slide. If you press these at the same time, you drop. And I was like, what do you mean by drop? I tried pressing it while I was going through the game, and I just didn't know what it meant at first. So also for this game, just like the kind of Galaxy one, like it forces you to move. Like you are always moving forward in the side scroller. You can choose to move faster through it and you can drop back, but it's not like the beat 'em up game where you can just stay standing in the middle if you want. You don't have to move. It is not scrolling for you. In this game, it is, and sometimes it gets very quick. I guess the same thing is with the driving game. Like it's portrait and you're moving forward. And you can brake, I guess, yeah, and move side to side on the track. But anyway. So it was kind of difficult. Eventually, I found out because like you can jump on these different like platforms, long platforms, and you could just drop down from that platform. And I was like, oh, I get it. Like I wish I figured this out in the first half. I would say probably more. I think this is the most difficult one, and then the kind of like the shoot 'em up one, where I had to keep retrying and retrying and retrying a lot. In the second half of the game, like of this game, this like mini game or whatever you want to call it, it got really difficult, and there's like this shadowy mask thing. It's really now. See, I wish I brushed up on my anime because there's I'm pretty sure it came out of Studio Ghibli, but I don't remember for sure. I don't remember, but there's like it's like a black shadowy thing and it has like a mask on the front, and I'm like, dude, I think this is referencing that anime, but I don't remember the name of the anime. If you know, leave it in the comments and school me because I am silly. So anyway, it's got that kind of like shadowy masked creature in the background every once in a while, and you're like, yo, is that gonna be the boss? Because that would suck. And then at the very end, it's like, oh crap, like that is the boss, and he's like right behind you. Whatever it is, this shadowy mask thing is behind you, and it's like coming for you. And there's 3 different planes, like the majority of the time, and you're going faster. And there's usually nothing in front of you, but you have to like jump, and then you have to drop down and jump and drop down and jump and drop down, and eventually you figure out a pattern of like, okay, like when this creature shadowy thing looks in a certain direction, it will attack that way, and it'll leave this other plane exposed, so I can go down there or jump up to this one or whatever. But it's very quick. So that one was interesting because I haven't played a game like that before. So for me, that was not this nostalgic thing that brought me back to these other games that I could reference. Ninja Gaiden, like I said, when I played it, it was not like that. I don't know what ninja games it's referencing necessarily, but that's, I don't know. So again, if you know, then you tell me that. That'd be cool. I would love to learn more. But yeah, then after that, where I believe we go back to the arcade and we're just, or our characters like just talking through. Basically, the whole story is just that our character, is a stereotype or is a trope and just feels like they are an outsider and the other, and they want to get away. And there's a little bit of this personal element. I think it does a really good job of being relatable, but there is a personal element of like, I think that their parents got divorced, I think is what happened. And it talks a little about that and how they want to escape because their mom's just like too broken to like deal with them is basically the impression that I got. And how like, oh, they used to like have fun with dad, but then we don't know why dad's not there anymore. So maybe it wasn't divorce, maybe dad died. Like, we did go to the hospital in the very first, like, the beat 'em up like ends at the hospital. So it was like, oh, maybe that's what happened. I don't know. It doesn't go into enough detail, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention, unfortunately. But I think I was. I was pretty engrossed in the game. But again, I only played it once, and I'm hype. So yeah, it ends up at the RPGs being our last game. So I have never like this. I was aware of this style of RPG. It was like it's like these just like blue lines that create squares that are walls and a floor and like a ceiling almost, and it's like a labyrinth maze type thing. And you just like go forward and then like I've seen this style of RPG referenced before, but I've never played anything like it. So I thought that was kind of cool. And it says like your goal is to kill like 3 dragons or something, and you have to like find them. And there's like other enemies along the way. And just like a classic RPG, it's like you've got 3 different options of like styles of like how to attack an enemy. I think it was like beam, slash, and hack. And different enemies react differently to different attack types. So you learn that kind of quickly. You can gain experience and you can level up. Oh, you can also heal is one of your options. You've got 4 options. And yeah, you just kind of go through, and then you die a couple times because you don't have enough experience really and enough health. With your experience, like your hit points increase. Yeah. So anyway, with your XP, yeah, it's cool. It's simple, but it's cool. And the thing about this is that it's all these games are really addicting. Like the style that they're in, I'm like, I need to try that again. I need to try that again. I need to try it again because I didn't get it. I don't want to stop at any point. That's why I played the whole game in one run through. I was just like, I didn't want to stop. So the RPG thing is interesting because there's like this like there's like this really stereotypical robot voice that's like talking to you, and it's like, turn back, you don't belong here, you are lost. And then it starts almost being like parental. It's like, no, you are grounded, or like, go to your room. And it just says this kind of like when you defeat some of the enemies in the maze. And it's just like, what the heck? It's just kind of odd. Like the parental aspect, I was like, hey, I get it. Like, I get what you're referencing, but it's also kind of weird to do that. So I don't know. And then at the end of it, though, it's interesting because I'm like, okay, cool, I killed the 3 dragons. And then there's like the thing that was talking to you the whole time, this like robotronic like thing appears, and you like try to hit it, and then it's 0% damage. So you try to hit it again, 0% damage, and then that option of that attack style is gone. They like take it from you. And then you try another one, and the same thing, and then it's taken from you. And then I try another one, and it was like 1% damage on them, and then that one's taken away from me. And then all I had left was heal, and I tried to heal, and then that was taken away from me, which I thought was interesting. And then it just kind of like fades out, and it's like, what just happened? I didn't even have an option to kill this boss. Like, what is going on? And then the story kind of ends. Like the story the story doesn't end there. The game ends there. Like the mini game ends there, and then it transitions into a story, like the story of them kind of wrapping things up. And honestly, like I don't know why, but I can't even remember how they wrapped it up. But again, the whole arc of the thing is just representing this character that doesn't fit and that feels out of place and that finds refuge in the arcade with other people. And they said, I think at one point, it was like the most cool, uncool people they've ever seen. And you don't even make friends with anyone. You don't interact with any other characters in this story. I mean, at one point, it seems like they have a crush on this young woman, this But at the same time, it could just be like, okay, well, maybe it's just that woman's representing what they want to be because they're free and cool and just like a rebel and whatever, right? But that's the thing. It does get like personal, but also is a very large stereotype. But I think it does a great job of giving people something to relate to. Because yeah, the character lives in suburbia, but like I don't relate to that part of it. But I relate to the fact that they are an outsider and they're the other, and they don't feel like they fit. I think most people in their teens can relate to that to some degree. They've had some experiences where they feel misplaced and don't belong. At least that's me trying to be really empathetic and say that I think everyone could, whatever. But then again, maybe not everyone can. When I think of people, I'm like, you never felt that way. Um, but I certainly did, and the game appealed to me a lot. And I think that their escape was going to the arcade and video games and stuff, which was this really interesting thing because I didn't have an arcade to go to. Um, I always thought that would be a cool place to go. And even as an adult now, I'm like, man, I wish we had an arcade like is represented in this game. Like, I want to go. I just go to an arcade. When I was in university at the U of S, for the first couple of years I was there was an arcade, and it was like sick. They had pool tables in there too. There was like a LAN gaming situation with like a lot of computers, and there was like legit arcade games. Like I played Striker 1945. I think the second or third version of that game was like a stand-up arcade. They had pinball machines. Like there was a legit arcade there. It was called the Cove, by the way. And I was like, man, I love that. Like, I mean, they had Initial D there as well for a bit, which is sick. But yeah, like that was a thing that I wish that I had access to as a teenager. That would have been a place that I would have loved to go. I just like with my headphones on and music, and just like this character, just like walking alone, having their music, being by themselves, and finding refuge somewhere else. And that is really appealing to me. And I think that people can relate to that, even if it's not video games they're escaping to. For me, it was mostly books, and then like writing, and then just walking out and listening to my music and singing and screaming along. That's like those were things that I went to as coping mechanisms. I think that again, it appeals to me because of the time period, the aesthetics, the great music, and this nostalgic feel. But I think more people would appreciate and get into it, even if they don't have those same like landmarks that they can recall. Being like, oh, I remember that game. Or like, wow, I really like how this brings me back. I think that kids or the youth of today or whatever could still relate to this and find it cool, because the character obviously has some of those same issues that people will have forever and have always had of maybe feeling like they don't belong, they don't fit, and then finding a way to cope with that and finding a refuge for that and finding escapism. And a positive one, I should mention. I think that's cool, and it's kind of a meta type thing that's going on, because like it is a video game about video games and about how a character needs video or uses video games to kind of explore themselves in a way and learn about themselves and like and just get away from everything else. So that's kind of cool. I like that a lot. Oh man, this is way longer than I thought it would be, of course, but it's really good. I am excited about it. Other than the initial things I brought up first, that it was late and there's apparently a second part to it, I will say I'm glad there's a second part to it, because you can burn through the game really quick. I don't even know how much it is on Steam or on these other platforms. I didn't check that out because I backed it again so long ago, and I don't remember how much I put towards it. I got the most basic package, which is just like the game. So I don't remember how much I paid when I backed it, but I don't. Yeah, you'd have to look up how much it is. Depending on how good you are at playing the games, like, you know what I mean. You burn through it in maybe 2 hours. I can't see anyone taking more than 2 hours to get through it all. Maybe it took me one or a little over one. I don't really remember. I wasn't looking at the clock. But it didn't take me 2 hours, I'll tell you that. So that's one thing. I'm glad there's going to be a second version of the game. Now, or not version of the game, a second part to the game. And at the very end of the game, it says, like, this is just the beginning. It says, like, that's super cool. Like, but what does that other game look like? I don't know, because they went through all those 5 game types. Does that mean we get more of those game types? Are they going to be like this? Like, I don't know. I don't know how it works. I would like to know more about the story and the personal history and future of this, and present, of this character. I think that would be a really cool element to add in because we get some generalities and they're good. Like I said, the transition between the game and the story sometimes is really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And again, the soundtrack is freaking great. I love it. And it definitely changes based on the game as well, right? But even just like the main like soundtrack here, I'm gonna just gonna put that on for a bit. So you can feel that vibe a little bit. There's still that synthwave feel, even in just the general, like in the credits and in the start screen here, and in the story part, we have that synthwave thing going on, and then different types of 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 songs and soundtrack or whatever to different game types. Anyway, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. I'm just, again, rambling too long. I was impressed. It really lived up to what the trailer led me to believe. I'm excited for the second game to come out. I think it's going to come out in the summer. Later on, they said. I don't remember now, though. And I don't know if that is included in my package when I backed it or not. Because I don't know if this was their initial intention or they like, oh, now we're going to do a second part. And that's not, like, no one backed the second part. I should find some information on that. Again, at the very end of this video, which is coming very soon, I assure you, I will have a link to the trailer in the at the end screen there. It should be like the top left, I believe, is where I'll include the trailer for this game. 1980X. I've never seen, heard, or played anything like it. Again, it's really cool to include all those mini games, those things in there, the story element. I think it's a really good throwback. It represents that style very well of these games that were happening in the 80s. And, it appeals to me because of how old I am and, like, and the things that I can reference and recognize. But I also think that it would be relatable to people that, are growing up now, that are teenagers now or whatever. Like, if there's a 20-year age gap or something, like, I think that it could really span that, and that it's not hard to get into. Like I said, it's fairly easy enough to understand the gameplay, the stories there. Like, yeah, it's just all there. It's all there. It's just a little too short for. I don't remember how much I paid, but I know that that was just to get things rolling. It was Kickstarter or whatever. It is fairly short. I'm excited to see what they do with it in the future. I'm excited to see the story grow. 1980X, the only game I've reviewed so far. It's really good. I definitely recommend it. So on any of those platforms, you can check it out. It's available on Steam, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PS4. I would check that out. You can get more information on there. I will have a link in the description to just the website as well. Check it out. Watch the trailer for it. I just dig it so much. It's just really good, and it's unique and original. Check that out. We will see you on another time.